Hey guys, hope all is well. Welcome to the video for Unit 20.5, FDR, and the New Deal. So this is going to be the most important kind of unit within history of the Americas, the Great Depression. This is the one that generates the most IB questions for paper three. This is the one that's kind of the most intricate and still has effects in kind of today's world and today's society. And this is the one that I think is the kind of the most fun. And there'll be a little project associated with this unit. And if we were all back at school, we would go to FDR's mansion and his museum, and we'd kind of look around and look at the man he was and the life he lived and all of his New Deal policies. So I particularly like this unit, and it's a super important one. So let's get into the first part. So in the 1930s, obviously, we're in the middle of the Great Depression. All right, the stock market has crashed in 1920. In one of my flips from last lesson, you should remember that the stock market crash turned into the Depression. Now we're in the Depression. The Republicans elect to renominate Herbert Hoover for the presidential election, which, it was a insignificant play because there was no chance a Republican was going to win that election, again, because of the reasons I covered in the last unit. They blamed the Republicans and those laissez-faire policies for what happened in the stock market crash. So the Democrats are going to nominate Franklin Delano Roosevelt, abbreviated FDR. All right, so if you didn't know, those are the same person. FDR, just to kind of show you what kind of man he was and kind of what he stood for, he didn't really have to try to win the presidential election of 1932. He was going to win it regardless because of the factors that I just laid out in the last unit. But he goes on one of the largest campaign tours that we've really seen out of a president ever. Up and obviously modern times don't count, but back then it was one of the largest. He went state by state on the back of train cars, and he gave speeches to kind of rally the American people around him. And the one thing that he really drilled home was this right here. All right. That's his campaign slogan, right? That's the thing that he is going to run on. This idea of a New Deal for the American man, where he said that the United States government is going to take bold action, right? The previous presidents, the Republicans, didn't take bold action. They believe in laissez-faire. Hoover himself. I'm gonna pause for a second here and see if you can remember kind of the idea that Hoover came up with, that Americans shouldn't rely on their government. Their dog's going crazy outside. But hopefully you remember, it's rugged individualism, right? That's kind of that idea that the government isn't here to help out the American people. The American people should do it themselves. So FDR is going to take a completely different take on that, and he is going to make a lot of promises in these early campaign speeches, and the biggest parts of him are right here. Right? He is confident and he is charismatic in that he's confident that he can restore the American people's confidence. He's confident that he can restore the system as a whole by installing this a new government, a big government, right? That's what Democrats believe in. They believe in big government. Republicans believe in a smaller government. And he's super charismatic. All right, FDR was a great speaker. People loved listening to him speak. Next. So this is just kind of reiterating the last thing. The Republicans, again, renominate Hoover, FDR, a New Deal for the forgotten man, for the average man. He really kind of plays on going for the middle class of America and looking to repair them, which, again, is something that the Democratic Party does, right? That's their thing. So this is one of his campaign buttons, right? That advertised his campaign slogan, and again, that campaign slogan was a New Deal. Right there, it is. That's the campaign slogan right there. A New Deal for the American man, for the average man. So this is a little quiz. You'll find it right underneath this PowerPoint. It will be an active quiz. I'm just throwing in a couple checks to make sure that you guys kind of understand everything that's going on as I'm doing these videos, because I don't want anything to go over your heads. So you'll see that quiz below. It'll be linked into the PowerPoint. It's really easy to follow along, and I want you guys to do these, but I'll read it out loud. Where's the question? Can you guys not see the question? I'll have to edit that. I'll edit that before the quiz goes live. So this is the electoral map from FDR. He wins 42 out of 48 states. His electoral victory was 472 to 59. So it's an absolute landslide victory for FDR. Again, Hoover had no chance of winning that election. Right after that, Herbert Hoover becomes a lame duck president. So from November 1932 to March of 1933, the Depression is getting worse. A lame duck president is a name for someone who is elected out of office, but the new president is not inaugurated yet. So, FDR is sitting in the wings waiting to make all these changes, and Hoover is just kind of letting things get worse. He's still not doing enough to change the Depression. So FDR's inauguration, it's very, very, very famous inaugural speech. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself, is a very famous quote from his inauguration. He does a lot to, again, reassure the American people that he is here to help and that he is going to help. Again, if you remember from last unit, one of the biggest things that was killing the American system was that the average person lost their confidence in that system, in the banking system, in the role of government. And now he knew he needed to restore that. So he's going to hop on very, very quickly. As soon as he gets in office, he's going to work on that. All right. And there's something that presidents are still kind of monitored by today. It's called the first 100 days, right? And this starts with FDR. As soon as he gets in office, he starts making changes in the kind of the New Deal, right? He starts making all of these sweeping changes to the American system, and he does more in 100 days than most presidents do in their full 4-year term. So the 100 days is now how we measure how kind of effective or how revolutionary a president is going to be. And that comes from FDR and what he did during the New Deal. Another quick question for you guys: by making statements like there is nothing to fear but fear itself and a new deal for the American people, what is FDR trying to target / repair immediately? So I just want you guys to write a sentence or two here, just so I can make sure that you're on pace and where you need to be. These are kind of more quotes from his inauguration. We don't need to get into that. I'm not going to read it. You guys can read it to yourselves. This is a big part, and this is going to be the last part of the video that I touch on right now. The rest will come in later videos. But this is going to be one of the wildest things that we see from FDR, and he's really going to borrow from George Washington. He's going to borrow this idea from the earlier presidents in the United States. He assembles a very unique cabinet, all right? So if you don't remember, the cabinet is the president's closest advisors, right? He calls his cabinet the brain trust, right? Okay. So he is going to look to get as many opinions and as many experts as possible in his brain trust so that when issues come up and when the New Deal is being implemented, he can go to people that are much smarter than him or maybe have different viewpoints from him to really get all perspectives of what's going on so he can do the right actions to fix the problem. He doesn't get a bunch of yes men, which is what we've seen from presidents for years, especially in the 20s with the Republicans. So his cabinet members are Republican, right? He brings in Republicans because he wants to get their ideas. He wants to get their perspectives on issues, right? He brings in the first female Secretary of Labor. This man right here, the Secretary of Agriculture, Henry Wallace, that's going to be a name that I want you guys to remember. He is going to go on to do great things for FDR. He is a very, very, very left-wing politician. He believes in almost socialistic ideas, and he's bringing that to FDR's New Deal. And he's later going to become vice president under FDR, and he's again going to be, in my opinion, a great man. The Democrats don't really like him because he's a little too radical, but we'll get into that way later. So again, that's the brain trust. That's definitely one thing you need to remember from FDR, and how that idea of bringing in all these different minds to his cabinet, kind of the pros and cons of that, right? There are obviously a lot of pros to it, but there are a lot of cons at the same time. So just understand the brain trust, and how that is going to affect a president. Here's some pictures of people in the brain trust right here. Cordell Hull is going to be the Secretary of State. He's going to be a name that comes up later. These aren't names that I don't think that anyone should really remember, other than Henry Wallace, which I just highlighted on the last slide. Frances Perkins again is going to be a female on the cabinet, which was rare. She was the first Secretary of Labor on a presidential cabinet that was a female. So if you remember her name for like a women's rights movement idea, that's great. But you don't need to remember these names. Just remember the idea of the brain trust, right? Of this cabinet that's flooded with different perspectives. And then this is going to be the last slide I show you on this particular flip. Do you think FDR's brain trust was a smart move? And again, I want one or two sentences, kind of like a do now, just to make sure that you're keeping track as we're going. The next flip is going to be a big one. It's going to be kind of about the first 100 days in office and kind of the things that he does. And it might be a little bit of a longer video, but it's super, super, super important. So make sure you tune into that one. And again, I hope you guys are doing well. And until I see you next time, be good.